With the nicer weather, you may be going uninvited into a neighbor's home. Do you know how to behave?
The sight of a snake can bring up mixed emotions for many people. Some are fascinated while others are afraid. No matter how you feel, snakes serve a valuable function in the environment. They make a significant contribution controlling pests such as rodents and insects. The majority of bites result from people taking unnecessary risks with snakes.
This is Brent Smith. Let's get connected. Now that we've crossed over into spring, the thoughts of many have turned to the outdoors. From the prospects of making our property more attractive for the warmer months, to shedding the winter and getting back to hiking, swimming, and other similar outdoor activities, the spring brings an opportunity to become acquainted with a creature that makes itself scarce during the shorter days of the year. We're talking today about staying safe around snakes. Our serpentine neighbors are coming out of brumation, and today we're going to be discussing how to maintain our safety and theirs as we venture into their environments and possibly find them in ours. We are connecting today with Alan Peters, Curator of Herpetology at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute's Reptile Discovery Center in Washington, D.C. Alan, thank you for joining us today on Weekend Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy spring.
Thank you, and a very happy spring to you. I mentioned brumation a moment ago, which some may be disappointed to find out does not have anything to do with greeting a snake with a broom. Alan, what can you tell us today about brumation and how it's different from hibernation?
Sure. Brumation is a biological process in cold-blooded animals, which are called ectotherms. So reptiles and amphibians in colder weather slow down. Physiologically, it's similar, but different from mammals that actually do the hibernation. Hibernation is a very deep physiological sleep that generally lasts all winter. However, brumation refers to the cold-blooded reptiles and amphibians that tend to move, eat, and defecate, but not do those things in the colder months. If the weather warms up, reptiles will become active earlier in the season, but then slow down again once the temperature cools off and return to brumation until spring hits.
That's interesting, Alan. Thank you for clearing that up for us and making that distinction. There are many people who are probably saying as they hear this that the only good snake is a dead snake. But snakes can be beneficial, can't they? What are some of the ways that we can actually benefit from having snakes around?
One benefit of snakes is keeping rodent populations in check. That may be obvious. We really are beneficiaries of a protein extracted from snake venom that makes for good human heart medicine. That was the first effective ACE inhibitor, which actually widens the blood vessels and lowers your blood pressure. I actually took that medication at one time. Thinking beyond ourselves, these are incredibly beautiful and fascinating creatures. They have so many different ways to survive, and they function as an integral part of the ecological community they live in, and they really are styling with some incredible colors and patterns that will blow your mind if you just take time and Google it or look through a field guide.
Wow, I find it amazing that we actually have snakes to thank for ACE inhibitors. I had never heard that before. Thank you for this information. Alan, for whatever reason, it seems to be a popular opinion and belief that snakes are automatically our enemies, and if we cross into their territory or domain, they're going to seek after us if they're given an opportunity. I actually have a personal story that disproves that. My family and I, several years ago, were hiking in Wyoming. I went down to the bottom of the hill where my son and daughter were already standing. And when I stopped to take a rest on a large boulder, we suddenly heard the rattle of a rattlesnake. We tried to find it against the brown leaves, but it was really well camouflaged. When we finally saw it, it was because it was moving. And it wasn't just moving, but it was moving toward the boulder that I was sitting on. We all thought that it was heading toward me. My daughter, we won't go into why she thought the snake's vision was based on movement, but she looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Dad, don't move." After several moments of silence, I asked where the snake was and was informed by my son that the snake was curled, not coiled, not rattling, but curled, calm, and collected, just inches behind my right heel. Now, had that snake wanted to, it easily could have bitten me. So these snakes are wild animals, not necessarily to be feared, but definitely to be respected. We tried to take the snake's picture from a safe distance, but my hands were shaking so badly that it was more a rattle blur than a rattlesnake. Talk to us for a moment about when we have an encounter with them and how to stay safe when we cross into their environment.
First of all, I'm glad you can talk about that story in what you call a humorous way, and there wasn't something more life-threatening that occurred from it. In a similar case as yours, Brent, a group of us were hiking in the Shenandoah Mountains, and a rattlesnake was seemingly following my wife. But she was just in its path. I told her to keep walking, and the snake eventually moved into the leaf litter. We gave it its space, and all was good.
I see. So the snake wasn't necessarily following her. The two just happened to be traveling in the same direction. I have similar interactions with humans sometimes. So what is the best way to interact with them if the situation arises?
Well, snakes have all the basic needs any other animal has: shelter, food, water, and reproduction. If we give them that, give them their space, then things are all good. We really are moving into their space usually. We're too big to eat, and most of us do not smell like a rat. That means defense is the basis of some of the close human interactions. If we do not give them a reason to defend themselves, then all is still good. With some careful observation, the most dangerous part of these interactions are really on us, our reaction. So you did a good job in that case, I think. Granted, they may end up in unexpected places. And like you described, situational awareness and calm is our best defense. Snakes are just trying to make a living too. As long as we give them the space and learn to keep a safe distance and remain calm, they seem to have no interest in us. It's really best to give all snakes their space. You need to give all wildlife space, particularly if you're hiking outside. Be sure to do your homework. Look at a field guide and determine what kinds of snakes are in that area. Situational awareness is really important, along with knowledge of, in this case, the snakes and their habitats in a specific area, knowing your resources for getting help if you need it, and have your family or friends know where you are and what you're doing. They really are your lifeline, or even better, get them outside with you. You need a buddy or buddies when you're exploring. Don't put your hands where you cannot see. All these kinds of things come naturally if you stop and think about what you're doing. Anticipate, keep all your senses turned on, be ready to be amazed by what you see. It's not us against them. Snakes are cool, they're important, they're part of this world.
On today's Weekend Connection on the Bible Broadcasting Network, we're visiting with Alan Peters. Alan is the Curator of Herpetology at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute's Reptile Discovery Center, and that's to be found in Washington, D.C. We've talked today about interacting with their environment. Let's talk a little bit about how snakes interact with their own environment. What can you tell us about that?
These snakes are amazing. The heat-sensitive pits do provide a lot of information about what's going on around the snake. The pit vipers in particular are deep, and they have this membrane that's highly innervated with lots of nerves and air on both sides of it. So the infrared heat that's generated by, say, a prey item is detected with full detail, including the location. And the membrane gives real-time information. It does not just heat up and stay heated. It heats up and it fires the neurons, and then the membrane quickly cools. So the information is continually being refreshed so that, if there's a mouse there, the animal can accurately track even in the dark. The heat sensing and smell are primary senses for snakes, while sight and touch are more primary senses for humans. Also similar to the pit, the snakes have forked tongues. It's just not a cute thing or a scary thing. It has a full function, and it's really fascinating because with the branching and two sides of the tongue, the smells can be gathered from opposite directions. So if a smell like a mouse or a rat is stronger on one side, the animal knows to go in that direction to pursue its food. This also contributes to functioning in completely dark spaces. The snake can find and strike a mouse with incredible accuracy.
Alan, we really appreciate the valuable information you're giving us about these animals today. Now, we've talked so far today about how we can most safely interact with their environment and how they are engineered to interact with their own environment. They don't see us as food, and they only negatively interact with us when they feel that they need to defend themselves. But even when we're carefully keeping these things in mind, sometimes people do get bitten by snakes. I know that one horrible idea from the past for when this happens was for the puncture wounds to be cut with a knife and for the snake's venom to be sucked out with the mouth. People in the know say to not do that anymore. What should we do when a snake bite has occurred?
You're right about that, Brent. Many people have had permanent damage to arms and legs, whether it was a panic treatment in the field or a well-meaning physician destroying muscle tissue that never fully healed. It's a bad deal. What is critical is remaining calm, minimizing the circulation of the venom in your body, and getting to a physician that knows how to administer antivenom. You need that antivenom as quick as possible. And many countries do not have access to antivenom like we do in the U.S. So there are much more higher statistics that you can find of people dying because of the inability to get antivenom, and it's something we keep here in the zoo on site to protect our staff.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. Alan, time is very firmly urging us to move along this afternoon, but I do have one more question. There is an understanding that you can tell whether a snake is venomous or not by the shape of its head or the shape of its pupils. What can you tell us about that?
That is a rule of thumb many people use, but like all rules of thumb, there are always exceptions. In the heat of the moment, you may be anxious and not see those features clearly, so it's not a good rule of thumb. Learn to recognize the color patterns and the size of various types of snakes. That actually is the exciting part of my work. If you can learn baseball player names and statistics, just think about how cool it is to know what you can find outside in an incredibly diverse and intertwined natural world, and taking it all in is so cool.
Alan Peters, Curator of Herpetology at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute's Reptile Discovery Center in Washington, D.C., has been our guest today on Weekend Connection. Alan, we thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you again for having me. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it myself. My name is Brent Smith, and you've been listening to Weekend Connection on the Bible Broadcasting Network. If you have any questions about what you've heard today, you can visit the National Zoo's website at nationalzoo.si.edu.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.